the entire central bank, the establishment, the deep state, they've been trying to push the idea that what Trump is doing out there with his tariffs and everything else, all his economic policies, that it would bring down the entire economic system of the United States, that it would ruin the global economy. Now, we really need to step back for a moment and really think about what has been happening here. We know the globalists, they have been setting up their trade deals. They established organizations. They made it seem like this is in the best interest of the everyday person. Then Trump came along and kind of put a wrench in their plan. And since that time when he came into office, they thought that they had him trapped and those who were working with him all trapped. There was going to be no way out of this. They had complete control. Now remember, the central banking establishment, the deep state, they have had complete control of the entire system for a very long time. And they thought this was going to be easy peasy, no problem. It was going to work out perfectly where they would be able to blame everything on Trump. Well, guess what's been happening? The opposite. They are now trapped because they didn't expect what is happening right now. Now, we know the central bankers, the mainstream media, and the rest have been saying, all these tariffs into place, it's going to hurt the steel industry, it's going to hurt everything. Who's going to pay for all this? It's going to hurt everything. Really, what was happening was the globalist trade deals that they put into place, that is what was hurting everything here in the United States. All the regulations, all the taxes. Now, when you start to undo this, and you start to remove a lot of this, what happens? Everything starts to open up. Even if you put tariffs into place, you are still better off than having a globalist trade system in place. And we're going to be talking about this in just a little bit. And the mainstream media now has to admit what is happening. But first, let's go out to the UK. Now, we see that the EU and the UK, they have approved a Brexit divorce deal. This doesn't mean that it's all over. All this means is that the leaders, they decided, okay, we are now in agreement. And now we move to the next step. What is the next step? Well, the agreement has to be endorsed or rejected by British MPs. And what this means is that we're going to be headed into this transition period. And most likely, the UK, the EU will be in this transition period for a very long time. I think this has been their plan all along. Maybe it will turn out completely different, but this agreement is not really for the people. It's weighted towards the EU. And of course, as we know, the central bank will never let a country just leave their system completely. It's completely impossible. And the UK and the rest of the European nations who want to leave, well, the central bank will threaten, they will fight, they will do whatever they possibly can to keep them in this system. And what we're going to see right now is that there's going to be a huge fight. There's going to be a battle. And they're going to probably say that this is a transition period, and you'll see the transition period last for 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years, and they'll continue to fight over it. And the central bankers love this because as both sides are fighting, guess what? The UK never leaves. They're still exactly where they've always been, stuck with the EU. Now, we know that the people, they voted. And we've seen this before in the past. The deep state, the central bankers, the establishment, they don't work for the people. They don't care what the people say. You can see it. It's self-evident. When the people in Greece voted to put Tsipras into power, it was under the entire idea that Tsipras was going to go against the central bank. He really didn't. The Brexit was voted on to say, hey, we the people here in the UK don't want to be part of the EU system. And we the people want to break free of it. And guess what's happening? It really is not going in the way of the people. This is not what the people wanted. But again, the people who are leading us today in certain countries, they're not following what the people want. They don't care how low their ratings are. It makes no difference. They make you think and believe that they're working for the people, but in the background, they're working for unelected leaders. And this is the problem with Trump in the United States. They don't have control over him. They're nervous and afraid of him. They don't like what he's doing because he's not following protocol. And you're going to see as time goes on, he's going to move further and further away from what the central bank wants, what the deep state wants, what everybody wants, and the calls and the screams and the carrying on from that side is going to get louder and louder. In the meantime, the plan is to bring the central bank economy to its knees. And the only way to do this is to implode it, destroy it. Right now, we're seeing that U.S. fast food outlets, they're experiencing a 2.6% drop in customers during September versus a year ago. And we're starting to see that these types of restaurants, they are declining very, very rapidly. We're also seeing other restaurants where they're declining very, very rapidly. Now, no, everyone is not getting their fast food online. What this means is, one, people are probably looking for a healthier option. Number two, this is becoming too expensive for people to go out and buy this type of food. This is why we see the restaurant traffic declining every single day. In the housing market, we're seeing that home builders, they are starting to panic. And we're starting to see a lot of the same thing that we saw back in 2008. They are now offering price cuts of more than $100,000, along with free upgrades such as media rooms, cabinets, and blinds. This is how desperate they are getting because they understand and they realize that the entire system is not doing what it did before. And what is that? What was it doing before? Well, the central banks were pumping up the bubbles. The deep state, the president at the time, they all went along with the Federal Reserve. And everything was moving along smoothly. And they made people believe that everything was great. We've been reporting since then that everything has not been great, that it's one gigantic illusion. And we knew what their plan was at that time. It was to make everyone feel comfortable, make everyone believe that everything was great, have some type of war and event to explain why the entire system came down, and why everyone had to sacrifice, tighten their belts. Now, that plan is out the window. The new plan is to bring the system down, make it look like, and use the manipulation they've been using for a very long time. When I say they, I'm talking about the administration in the past, the central bank, the deep state. They've been manipulating the economy for a very long time. Use their manipulation against them. Make it look like the economy is doing better than ever. This way they can't blame Trump. They tried to blame Trump on his tariff policy, where they were saying, well, the tariffs that are being put into place, it's going to hurt all the industries. It's going to bring down business. It's going to be a complete nightmare. It's going to crash the economy. What are we seeing right now? Well, in June of 2018, Trump instructed U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer to initiate a 10% tariff on $200 billion of Chinese goods. After 2 months of China refusing to negotiate renewed trade deals in good faith, Trump instructed Lighthizer to increase the tariffs to 25% in August. So we had round one, round two. So there is a third tranche of tariffs scheduled for January 1st of 2019 if China doesn't agree on trade deals. Now let's think about this for a second. He implemented these trade deals against China, and he put in place these tariffs. We know that China's been stealing a lot of the secrets. We know that Clinton and the rest have been selling them secrets. And we know that this whole system was designed to be moved from the United States over to China. Eventually, this is why everything was being put into place like this. This is why we saw manufacturing be moved out of this country. This is why we saw these terrible, terrible trade deals, because eventually it was going to happen. They were going to bring the United States down to a level of a third world country. This was their plan. Well, their plans are out the window, as we know. Now, what's very interesting, as Trump was putting these tariffs into place, we heard all the economists saying how bad this was going to be for the economy. It was going to bring down the economy. This is when Trump started to manipulate the data. Did he do it on his own? Is this something new? No. He used what the central bank, the deep state, has done in the past. It's the same manipulation. He's just pushing it to the extreme. So this way they can't say anything. What has come out of all of this is a new study. And this study shows what these tariffs have done to the country. And guess what it's done? Nothing. What they identified was that approximately 4.5% of the tariffs is being carried by the American consumer. Now, the rest of it, 20.5%, has been absorbed by Chinese producers. Now, this is coming out of Bloomberg. And they're saying that Trump is succeeding in making China pay most of the cost of his trade war. So this paper, this report that came out from the Econ Poll Europe, a network of researchers in the European Union, U.S. companies and consumers will only pay 4.5% more than the nation-imposed 25% tariffs on the $250 billion of Chinese goods. And the other 20.5% is China. So did this destroy the economy? Are we seeing prices skyrocket like they said by 25%? No. And we know that 4.5% is really nothing compared to the inflation from the devaluing of the dollar. So everything that they talked about, everything that they said about the economy falling apart because of these tariffs has not come true. Remember, when you're unwinding the globalist trade deals, which are absolutely terrible right from the beginning because they weren't in the best interest of the people of the United States. It was in the best interest of the central bank, the deep state. It was pushed into place for a specific reason, and that was to move everything out of the United States, companies, manufacturing, and make sure they never came back here. Never came back because of regulations, taxes, and no incentives. And then they set up these awful trade deals like NAFTA. They were trying to push TPP and the rest. They set up the World Trade Organization. Remember, all of this is part of the central banking system. All of it was to push a certain agenda. Now that you're unwinding all this, now that you're removing all of this, you're starting to see that everything that they put into place was absolutely awful. And even though Trump is putting tariffs into place and saying, you know something, we need to even the playing field, we're not seeing a really big hit from what he is doing. Actually, it's having the opposite effect of what the mainstream media, the deep state, the financial pundits have been saying. Because remember, we've been living in a central bank economy that has been so fake. We've been living in such an illusionary world, we don't even know what a free market is anymore. We didn't even know what a real trade deal is that's good for the people. Because we've been kept in this fake world of their economy. And it's all starting to be unraveled right now. Trump has trapped them with his policies. And what's very interesting is the establishment, the deep state, the Rothschilds, they are pushing all of these articles out there, trying to give the Fed a way out of what they are doing. This is coming out of Barron's. Why the Fed could back down on rate hikes. They're giving them reasons and ammunition to say, you know something, we really don't have to raise the interest rates anymore. Actually, if you remember Christine Lagarde, way back, she didn't like the Fed raising the rates. She was completely against it. And then all of a sudden she changed her tune because it seemed a little ridiculous that the IMF, the Biz, and the rest didn't like what the Fed was doing. So they said, no, the Fed's doing the right thing. But you have to remember, Trump is in control of the Fed. Just like Putin took control of their private Western central bank, Trump is taking control of the Federal Reserve. He is an inside man. And they're doing exactly what he wants. They're pushing it to the edge. And guess what? Everything that they try to do to try to stop him is not going to work. Eventually what's going to happen is they're going to audit the Fed. That's what needs to happen. They need to show the world what these central bankers have been up to. Now, they're going to fight this, of course. But in the end, this is what has to happen. The system has to come down. It has to be blamed on the Fed. The Fed needs to be audited to show the world the corruption, the lies, the treasonous nature of these central banks and how they are not working in the best interest of the people of the United States and the rest of the world. And this is why Q came out and listed all of those Rothschild central banks to let everyone know this is the end game. Once they do that, the people will be free. The chains will be off and economies will flourish. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening.